Welcome back to the series focusing on fractional work and what that looks like for your organization. Now, change doesn't have to be scary. It's just where does your organization want to go and what tools do you need? Get knowledgeable of those tools and make a plan forward, just like anything else that you've overcome up to this point. So, fractional work is no different than other modern workforce shifts. It's just very different than the traditional approaches. But the interesting thing is it's going to provide a lot of value back to your workforce, new expertise and skill sets, and also provide an avenue for your workforce that might not want to work full time, and you get to keep them instead of them leaving. So it's a really great retention tool. Now, in this episode, I am going to cover some of the onboarding and integration steps that you can take for fractional workers and how that might be different between generations, because it's not going to be the same as a new hire. You're not going to do a whole onboarding plan, but it's important that you do have an onboarding for fractional workers so that they're integrated into your culture, your communication, and everyone gets along versus this person coming in and jabbing everyone, making a mess, and then leaving. And I definitely have had that from the temp side. When I was on maternity leaves, I would have temps try to cover for me, and they would kind of make a mess. And they were doing things that they shouldn't have been touching and having conversations they shouldn't have been having, and then I have to clean up the mess when I get back from maternity leave. We don't want that. Because interestingly enough, when I had my third kid, I asked my team about what maternity leave would look like this time, and they literally told me, don't get a temp. Don't get a temp. And these were very skilled people that were covering for me. I think they just didn't understand our culture, our communication style, and so they did make a mess while I was gone. So they literally didn't even want someone to cover for me when I went out on my third maternity leave. So that's the damage it can do. We want to keep it in the energy zone, knowing that 50% of the workforce will be fractional work. We want to keep it in that high energy, high value productivity optimization route versus the drainer. Like, let's not do this. It didn't work last time. So I'm going to bring up the generational workforce and what that's looking like in 2025 so that you can see what onboarding would look like for each generation. Now, when I work with clients on this change management shift of workforce energy management, we talk a lot about fractional work and what this workforce looks like, what teams look like in the future, because we're going to start building a roadmap there. And onboarding is different for every organization and every industry. So I'm going to do a very high level overview for you to just get the wheels turning, really think about what do these steps look like. But we should be connecting to see what is this plan when you roll it out, not only for the fractional worker, but for your organization, because there's a lot of change management pieces in that you don't want to disregard the rest of the employees because of retention factors. You don't want to leave them kind of in the dark, or maybe they feel like their job is being taken. There's a lot of factors to consider. So let's connect through my website listed in the description to talk about this a little bit more and have a meaningful conversation on what does your roadmap look like. Now, knowing that the 2025 workforce will be mainly millennials and Gen Z, I'll focus some conversation there, but actually some really good value adds will be Gen X and boomers. To tell you the truth, the most value add right now will be boomers in the next couple of years, because that is the skill set that is leaving the workforce. And so if you think of a crucial time to grab up that experience and that expertise and that skill set, it's right now. Because once they exit, most retirees don't come back, right? They don't come back into the workforce unless it's a financial need. So you want to start providing fractional work to boomers now so that they start exiting slowly, and then your workforce is still gaining all that experience and mentorship from them. So onboarding and integration of a fractional worker might be a little different per generation, and certainly you should have a program of how you would onboard, but just understand that the needs per generation might be different, and the needs on the project that they might be working on might be different. So the first step is, what are the necessary resources and training that is needed for a fractional worker? So if the project is just this specific project in this specific department, they probably don't need to meet with everyone in the organization. Let's not waste everyone's time. They're going to come into engineering and integrate some project management software to the accounting or inventory software. So everything is connected. They only need to work with a couple engineers, maybe like your main project managers in engineering, maybe the main accountant or finance person, to make sure that, we're hitting all the marks on the integration software. The rest of the people in the organization really don't need to be working with them or integrating with them. Certainly you can highlight in your organization, and obviously there's benefits if people are learning from this person, but if you're really busy with other things, let them come in just like a contractor would, focus on the team that they need to, and then they can get out. So what are the necessary resources then that they need for this project? They probably need access to the software. That's an IT thing. They might even need licenses. So that's something to consider with your IT people, is what do licensing look like to them? And I do think that software companies will probably start having temporary license avenues, because right now they have annual license. You pay for this license per user per year, and I think they're actually going to have probably more levels offered to companies to say, you're probably going to have a lot of fractional workers, so we also have a fractional license, which means it's 90 days or less or something like that. So what software do they need access to? What communication mediums do they need access to or need to be referencing? And that should be really known as they go through. And I saw this with a fractional worker that they got them set up in the software they were doing like a system integration thing. They got them set up in the two softwares, and they forgot about the communication mediums. So these departments were like talking about the software integration and talking about some hurdles that they're going to run into and some gaps that they need to fill during the system integration, but no one was circling back to this fractional worker. So they were marching along with the information that they had, and then they got to a stop point, a checkpoint, to check on the project timeline, check to see how things are on time and hopefully on budget. And they were missing chunks. They were missing chunks of this project. And then they realized, well, they haven't been part of any of these other meetings, these department meetings, these chats, these project management chats. So make sure that you're really looking at the project scope as a whole, that this person is going to be a little bit more involved in your operation than your typical consultant. So like, for example, I'll come in and train a department, and I might be focusing on change management or workforce energy management. I can come in and teach that without being part of their software. I don't need to be part of their Teams chats and their file management system. But if I'm doing something that's going to affect their operation inside, I might want to take a look or be involved in that. So what parameters do you want to set? And I think the biggest thing in IT is you're going to need to tell IT what to do. I've worked with enough IT people that we have these ideas. We're like, yeah, they need to be part of project management software. And IT is like, so what do you want them have permissions to do within that? So sometimes it's just a viewer. Sometimes you want them as an editor in the software. Again, make sure that they have enough information of the operation to not cause problems. Maybe you just want them as someone who can collect data and reports out of the software, but not touch any code behind it, things like that. So really understand the scope of the project so that you know what resources and training they need coming in. The other thing you want to do is integration into existing teams. So if you have a fractional worker that's going to be with you all year, maybe 2 years. Usually fractional works a little bit longer than like a come in and do a consultant type thing and then leave. So it's a little bit longer role. You want them maybe part of the department meeting, which is an important discussion to have with this fractional worker as they onboard or even in that front end project scope, because they might be busy. As fractional workers and this type of environment takes off, they might have multiple clients. So if you say 10 o'clock on Tuesday, we have a meeting in engineering, they might be busy. They might already be on another client meeting at 10 o'clock. So really understanding what do they need to be involved in the front half will help with that onboarding and transition and integration into what you want them to do. And then it also will help foster collaboration. So a great way, if you don't want to bog down their schedules with all this onboarding meetings and department meetings, is to do a slight mentorship program. And again, you have to have the right fractional workers, because some fractional workers are like, I don't want to train people. I want to come in, do this function, and then I'm done. I want to sign off. And that's okay too. But there is fractional workers like boomers that want to pass on their experience, want to pass on some knowledge before they leave, like their legacy. Use them for mentorship. So again, create a scope around it. But say I have someone in purchasing and they're very good at negotiating contracts. So they're going to be kind of your strategic purchasing person, negotiating contracts going forward. They work 60 hours a month. So some weeks are going to be heavier, some weeks are going to be lighter. But then my purchasing team, I'm going to have in the background of those calls so that they can see the techniques and language being used and the communication and the soft skills that you can't get in outside trainers coming in, trying to teach a tool, and then they leave. It's almost like they're seeing a behavior over and over and over again. And that's a great learning experience for people that are new to the field, are working on soft skills, or maybe just even working on those negotiation skills. So there's things that you can do to foster collaboration with these fractional workers so they're not just an outside employee, an external employee. And they're seeing less of a temp situation, less of a contractor situation, and they're seen more as they're part of the team, but very part-time and flexible. So what does this onboarding and integration look like to you? Like I said, on the generational image that I have up right now, 15% is boomers, so I would say they would be probably more focused on the mentorship, the face-to-face conversations, than trying to learn new communication mediums and where am I chatting and all that new technology that's coming in. Gen X is a great mentor as well, buffering boomers and millennials and Gen Z, so you could use them as well as their fractional work to mentor others, and they can actually speak up on some gaps they're seeing from the outside looking in. And then millennials and Gen Z, you're going to want to integrate and onboard as much virtually. Like say if someone would hire me for fractional HR work, I don't want to go in the office for every department meeting. I'll do a Teams meeting and get just as much out of it. I'm very personable. I'm very good at virtual presentations and integration. So that's all I need. I love to be in person. I get re-energized that way. But if I have to be there every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, let's just do that virtually because I work a lot on time management. So what generation is the fractional worker? And then how do you want to onboard them and integrate them into the project so that it's successful, so that it's for the long haul, for 1 or 2 years, and that you would want to hire people again. Because if they're going to come in and out for just a specific project, maybe it's not a fractional worker, maybe it's just a contractor for this specific project. But if they're going to be over and over and over again, you want to get them a little bit more integrated and onboarded with your communication and culture of your workforce. And really, when you back up and look at onboarding, it's to make sure that everyone is comfortable with this new person so that it's not seen as a challenge. It's seen as a benefit, a value add to have them here. And knowing that the shift is happening, the more that you can start taking the steps on what this onboarding and integration looks like, the easier it'll be when a fractional worker pops up in your network and you're like, we could use them right now. You're ready. You have an onboarding plan, you have an integration plan, versus scrambling, maybe even during your busy season, trying to onboard a fractional worker, something new that the team doesn't understand. So again, part of change management is exploring and educating yourself early so that you can start planning next steps of what this looks like. Make sure you subscribe and continue on with me as we look at what does fractional work look like for your organization, and a plan forward. We'll be talking about how do you support fractional work and manage it, what does technology and tools looks like, and much more coming up.